Hello friends, I am Chevy. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's all good and great and wonderful. I'm doing okay. And we're going to talk about books today because I haven't been reading this week. I've been laid up sick, but I just haven't been wanting to read. And I think part of that is due to what I have been reading. And we're going to talk about that a little bit. So this might be a fairly negative review, but understand that I'm not trying to be a harsh critic. What I've been reading is books 3 and 4 of the Cradle series by Will White. A couple weeks ago, I did a video on books 1 and 2. I talked then about, I found this series through Our Fantasy. It's very highly recommended there. Anytime somebody's looking for kind of just a light, easy read, people say, go read this. So I've been in the mood for that for a long time. I picked up the first 7 books. They were free on Amazon. I picked them up, and I read books 1 and 2 and had fun, and now I've read books 3 and 4, so I figure we'll talk a little bit about it. Now, if it's not obvious, I'm not excited about it, and I probably won't continue reading the series. But we'll see. Like, I still have books 5, 6, and 7, so if I ever need to get, something read, I can always come back to it. But what happens is, this is a book series that's a specific subgenre of fantasy called progression fantasy. And the idea in progression fantasy is that the characters live in a world where levels are a thing. Like, they're an actual thing. Very much like a video game or an anime, characters level up. And this happens to be like a martial arts setting, and so characters are learning techniques and skills and, fireballs or whatever magic abilities that they learn as they level up. And the way that levels work in these worlds, a person one level higher than you is infinitely more powerful than you. Like, they would have no problem kicking your butt. They could probably kick the butt of a dozen people one level below them. And a person a level above that. So a person 2 levels above you is completely untouchable by people at your level. So entire armies, they could just take out entire armies. And there becomes a point when you reach a certain level where you can just like crush people's will to exist without even thinking about it. So these levels are huge leaps, right? And in the first couple of books we get introduced to our main character, Lyndon, who is born kind of stunted. He has like this unusual energy inside of him that isn't like anybody else's, and because of that he's told he's never going to be anything and that he just needs to, give up, essentially. And he learns through a vision that's not necessarily the case, that he does have the ability to be somebody. He just has to leave his homeland. And so this series is set up kind of like a video game where you start off in the starter area where everybody's level 1 and 2 and 3, and they don't even know that there's more beyond their borders because they've never left their homeland. And once you leave their homeland, you get to find all these other peoples that have way more power than the people where he's from. And it's not a chosen one story specifically, but essentially he gets to witness an event that should not have happened, and an overseer, or essentially somebody who has transcended this world and has gone on to be kind of a god, comes down and stops the problem, and he gets to see this. And because he's like, power thirsty, because he's been told he's going to be garbage for his whole life, he basically approaches this person and is like, I don't want to do this. Like, what can you help me? And she checks some stuff and finds out that his homeland's going to get destroyed in 30 years. And so she decides to say, yeah, you know what? You have the potential. Like, there is potential in you. Here's what you need to do. And she sets him on this quest. And so that's the whole start of the series. So books 1 and 2 are, the first book is him just figuring out how to get away from his homeland, and then book 2 is him trying to survive, and he meets another main character named Ethan. And Ethan is that wonky anime character that shows up and like fights people with wicker baskets and a pair of scissors, like, and does just seemingly random things, but nobody can touch him because he's so all-powerful. Ethan says, you're not this weakling that you think you are, I can fix you. And so he starts studying with Ethan. So that's where kind of book 2 leaves off. We start to find out that he's not as stunted as he thinks he is. And because he has been so stunted, he has trained himself way harder than anybody else. So he's been able to push his body way farther down the path of each of his levels than all the other people around him, because he's had to push himself so hard. Book 3 opens with the idea that he's going to learn a technique or a path or a martial art that is so powerful it's forbidden. Like, it's completely forbidden. And so that's when we start to get to see the kind of the tip, right? Lyndon now goes from this character who is stunted to a character who is at least able to not die in a fight. And then we get to see, suddenly he gets this power that puts him at the very tip top of his rank, every rank. So he starts to, we start to see that maybe level isn't everything, because this guy could actually take down somebody a level above him, and he has multiple times. And so in book 3, we get to see this power unfold. And we get to see him become greater and bigger and stronger and more capable, but at the same time, he's still this kind of like humble, kind of lovable goofball. Like, he doesn't think that he has all this power that he has, and he kind of stumbles his way through things, and that's part of the character's charm. And then book 4 happens. And book 4 is the reason why I haven't been reading much. It just was not good. It was really not fun to read. First of all, while this person who writes these books is a professional author, he makes a living writing. He's not a very good writer. His prose is bad. He doesn't describe scenes very well. He contradicts himself very often. He doesn't set the scene at all. Usually, you're just kind of fumbling through it. He doesn't really explain to you what's happening. He just writes sentences and hopes that you follow along. And for the most part, it's fine. Like, it works just fine, because that's not really the story. The story is this lovable little goofball character and on his quest to become somebody and to save his homeworld, or his homeland. So the problem is that story of that lovable character progressing through the world, it hits like a brick wall in book 4, and suddenly all of that bad writing comes to the forefront. Instead of the story being fun and engaging and just kind of pushing you along regardless of how poorly it's written, in book 4 it's just nothing but slog, and you're just like, I don't care anymore. Because what happens is the beginning of book 4 is essentially what we've been building up to. There was a year that Lyndon was going to have to face a supremely powerful enemy, and he's been storing up energy and trying to figure out a way to win this fight, and then the fight happens and he loses, and then the whole world goes to shit. In the last half of the book, we spend like, there's going to be this big great war, and the dread gods are coming back, and everything's going to get destroyed, and we're going to send our army off. The Empire is going to send their army off, and our main characters sign up for this army, and they're going to go fight in this war. And then they spend the war huddled in a basement, and nothing really happens. And it's just it's just so boring. It's one of those, like, it's almost like book 2 syndrome in a trilogy, where you're just like, stuff has to happen, the plot has to progress. At this point, it's not about the characters, it's about the plot, because we need to tie up a few things, or in this particular case, open the doors to a few things. And in order to get there, we have to go through a bunch of stuff. And none of that stuff is necessarily interesting. It's all just kind of stuff. And it really made for just it was the first time in the series that I didn't enjoy opening the book to read. It was more like, I gotta get through this because I started it. And so because of that, I think I'm going to call it here on the series. I've finished book 4. I've opened book 5, but I just don't feel like reading it right now. I think I'm going to go pick something else up. I'm currently debating the second Mistborn trilogy, Stormlight Archive, or maybe Dresden Files. I don't know what else. There's other stuff on my reading list that I want to get to. I might start Wheel of Time again. I've never finished Wheel of Time, so I might start it again. I can't decide what to do, but I'm pretty confident right now I'm not going to be reading book 5 anytime soon of the Cradle series, just because of how boring book 4 was. It was a disappointment. I mean, like I said, it's... I don't want to be mean, because the guy is making a living writing these books, and he's doing a good job of it, obviously. His books sell thousands upon thousands of copies, but they are not well written. And when an... I keep wanting to use the word amateur, and that just feels excessively mean, because he's obviously not an amateur, but his writing can be amateurish. When the amateurish writing is getting in the way because the story isn't interesting enough, that's when it's like, well, I don't know if I can continue. You know, maybe if the writing style or the prose was a little stronger, book 4 would have stood a little bit harder on its spine, but right now it's just kind of flopped on its face. Those weren't good words. I'm not good at words. Like, who am I to criticize somebody about words? I'm not good with them. But that's how I felt. So there you go. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again Monday. Today's word you should know to sound smart is effete. It is an adjective meaning decadent and lacking in vigor due to decadence or self-indulgence. The Eddingtons donated one of their serving sets to charity, so only the truly effete would deign to label the family as snobs. Effete. E-F-F-E-T-E. I have no clue what that means. Decadent and lacking in vigor due to decadence? Like, lazy? I don't... Lacking in vigor due to decadence. What does that even mean?